Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we are going to take up the important articles from 3rd of February 2023's newspaper. So, firstly, we have news regarding again the Adani stocks, the Adani group of stocks, which are falling. They're still under free fall, and they've also cancelled their FPO, which is further public offer. So, we have already discussed in the previous videos what is an FPO. So, they have cancelled this thing, and apart from that, RBI it has sought details from the banks about their exposure to the Adani group of companies. So RBI is also playing its role. It is like started asking about the information about the banks' exposures to the Adani group of stocks. So and this issue is like it has also stalled the parliamentary proceedings, and opposition is seeking for a joint parliamentary committee's probe into this whole issue where Adani group of companies has been accused of stock manipulation and accounting fraud. Apart from that, the finance minister says that they're expecting states to tap the loan window quicker. And under the budget, the states they have been provided rupees 1.3 lakh crores of interest-free loans for a period of 50 years. And this is definitely going to play an important role when it comes to the push to capital expenditure by the center. And what becomes now important is that that must be effectively implemented at the ground level if we really want to see the results. And apart from that, the Supreme Court, it on Thursday, it refused to set aside a provision in the election law that allows candidates to contest polls from two constituencies simultaneously. So this is the current provision, and Supreme Court has said that it basically it is there whether the power lies with the parliament that it if it wants it can change this provision through an amendment, but the Supreme Court is not going to look into this matter, and this thing is mentioned under Section 33 of the Representation of the People's Act. And they say that this is a policy matter and an issue concerning the political democracy. So it is for the parliament to take a call on this thing. So, is Masuri going to be the next Joshimat? And recently, the National Green Tribunal it has formed a panel to suggest some remedial measures for preventing environmental damage to the town. And NGT it also mentioned a 2001 study which had suggested that no further construction was viable in the city of Masuri. And apart from that, NGT, it has the power of taking suo motu cognizance. So it took a suo motu cognizance of this. A newspaper report that has warned of a Joshimat-like situation in Masuri town, and it has issued directions to the state government of Uttarakhand to conduct a study of specific carrying capacity of this hill station, and this should be applicable to all the popular hill stations in India. And a thorough study must be conducted regarding the uh, for study regarding the specific carrying capacity of each and every hill station, because obviously we do not wish the Joshimat situation to happen at other places as well. And we know that Punjab being a border state to Pakistan, the specifically the issue regarding drug trade is prevalent over there, and as when we try to understand the data it shows that 42% of the inmates in the Punjab's prisons they are either accused or convicts that are you can say regarding or they're related to the narcotics cases. So since data is pointing towards this thing and we know the situation at the ground level, so this challenge becomes a huge and becomes huge challenge and becomes important for the state governments, for different civil society organizations, for NGOs to come to the forefront to deal with such cases, because obviously it is going to be huge negative on the health, on obviously the job opportunities for the careers of the youth in this state. Then LCA Tejas. So recently we're going to have Aero India 2023 and LCA Tejas, which is obviously an indigenous aircraft. So It is being produced by private partners, and it is a single engine, lightweight, highly agile, multi role supersonic fighter jet. So it has quadruplex digital fly by wire flight control system installed. So you can also have a look at LCA Tejas in this picture as well. And this is important. And coming to the editorial section, so specifically talking about the funds allocated for research and development in the context of science and technology, we see that more funding for research must be met with easing of the bureaucratic procedures. And in this year's budget, we have seen a 15% increase in terms of allocation, and the bulk of this hike, it has gone to the Department of Science and Technology to the tune of rupees approximately 7,800 crore rupees, which is an increase of 32% from last year's budget. Then we have Department of Biotechnology, which is seeing a hike of almost 4% in budget allocation. We have deep ocean missions, which includes, among other components, developing a deep submersible vehicle. And we have the National Research Foundation. It has also got substantially hikes than in the previous years, assigned that they are the center's immediate focus. So the central government is focusing more upon the science sector, and we'll be also having centers for excellence in artificial intelligence research. We'll be having initiatives to scale up technology to produce laboratory made diamonds, and a center for research in sickle cell anemia. So we are emphasizing more upon science and technology. And looking at the share to the science and technology sector by the developed countries, they spend over 2% of their GDPs on research and development. And in India, according to 2022 estimate by the Global Innovation Index, it continues to hover around only 0.7%, despite India being among the world's largest producers of scientific literature. So the share, it is very, very low in India. And the funds, they are not the only challenge to research and development in India, but there is lack of significant raises across the department, which shows that the absorptive capacity of scientific institutions in the country is limited. And we have like research scholars, they are not getting promised funds on time, and they have to wait for the quality equipments which are required by them for carrying out their researches. And the bulk of research continues to be funded by the government, and we have little participation by the private sector in this area. So we need an easy process, an easy procedure to make the most efficient use of the funds that have been allocated for science and technological development. Then this article, it is a very important article in the context of the situation in Ladakh and why people are protesting over there, what are their demands. So we know that earlier the region was under the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and in 2019 we saw that Article 370 was repealed. So after that, Ladakh has been made a union territory apart from the Jammu, and we have like it is on the edge ever since it was carved out of as a union territory from the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019. So it has been 3 years, and we see a long pending demand from the Buddhists of the region. The locals, they have only grown restive over a period of time since we see that Ladakh has been declared as a union territory. So an agitation which is demanding the inclusion of this region, inclusion of Ladakh in the sixth schedule under Article 244 of the Constitution. So the sixth schedule is regarding providing special protection to the tribal populations, and this is one of the major demands of the Ladakhi people. And last week, we also saw Sonam Wangchuk. He, Max Essay winner, he went on a fast, and we saw that Ladakh, it came under a bureaucracy since it was declared as a union territory, and the local population found the bureaucracy to be hostile and irresponsive. So Jammu and Kashmir, it has a legislature, but Ladakh does not have. So it is obviously directly administered by the center and bureaucracy. So people find that bureaucracy is hostile and it is irresponsive. So it is not working in cooperation with the local population there in Ladakh. And there's a constant tussle between the locals, the elected representatives of two hill councils. So there are two hill councils in Kargil and Leh, and the bureaucracy. So there's a constant tussle between all these different representatives and stakeholders, and it has only widened over a period of time. So Kargil, unlike Leh, it is for like their demand is a little different from what is the Leh's demanding. So they are like they want to rejoin the erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir state, and they want restoration of the special status under Article 370. But given the current situation, the Kargil, basically the Kargil Democratic Alliance and the Leh Apex body. So they are now coming together over the common goals. And now they have four major demands and that they have put before the center. So that includes restoration of the full-fledged statehood. Secondly, they are demanding constitutional safeguards under the sixth schedule. Thirdly, they want separate Lok Sabha seats for Leh and Kargil districts. And fourthly, job reservation for the locals. And they find that all this is very important for protecting the Ladakh's identity, their culture, and the fragile environment. So they're very concerned specifically about their environment, environmental safety, and they also fear that private companies might come and set up and destroy the environment under the garb of development. So that is there. And Ladakh, it witnessed a major military incursion from China as well in 2020. Obviously, the situation it is volatile in eastern Ladakh, and this was just 10 months after Jammu and Kashmir's special status was scrapped and the erstwhile state was divided into two union territories, and that conflict remains unresolved as of now. So these are certain demands by the local population of Ladakh, and we know how situation has changed after Ladakh was given a status of union territory in 2019. Then again, a very important article and a very solution oriented article, which is regarding we know that globally the economic situation is uncertain, it is again volatile, and it is expected that the developed countries are heading into a recession. So under this backdrop, it is already showing up that it is impacting India's trade sector. So this article is suggesting that we should increase and we should be more connected with the South Asian economies where we have expectations, where we have the potential that trade can grow given the global uncertain situation, specifically in the West. So recently, IMF it published a paper which was South Asia's path to resilient growth. It argues that a strong base exists for South Asia trading more with dynamic East Asia, and since 1990, Southeast Asia trade, it has gathered pace, which is linked to obviously India's trade realigning towards East Asia through its Look East and Act East policies. So in addition, the regional trade in Asia that is also recovering after the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is there. And now this article is suggesting 4 steps which can be taken to bolster the trade in South Asian and Southeast Asian economies. So firstly, it is suggesting that regional trade integration across Asia can be encouraged by gradually reducing the barriers to goods and services trade in the terms of the taxes that are imposed on trade. So that includes the import tariffs and murky non-tariff measures. We have like phytosanitary measures, the quality standards which are set, and we have import tariffs which are imposed on the trade. So that all should be looked into in order to encourage trade. And all these tariffs and we can say restrictions were imposed by the South Asian economies since the 2008 global financial crisis, and they have still not been reversed by them. So this can be the first step. Secondly, we can improve the performance of special economic zones and invest in services SEZs to facilitate industrial clustering and exports. So South Asia, it has over 600 SEZs in operation, which is in Kochi, that is there in India. We have Bodar in Pakistan. Then we have Mirsarai in Bangladesh and Hambantota in Sri Lanka. So secondly, we can work upon improving the performance of SEZs and focus more upon the services SEZs. Thirdly, we can pursue comprehensive free trade agreements that eventually lead to regional comprehensive economic partnership to provide for a regional rules-based trade to ensure against rising protectionism. So RCEP can also play an important role, but India, it opted out of RCEP talks in November 2019. So India, it is right now, it is not a member of RCEP, and but door is still open for India to join the agreement. And India, it has also concluded few FTAs with United Arab Emirates and Australia in 2022, and we're still under talks with other countries. And the confidence gained from these can help prepare for future RCEP membership for India. While we understand and RCEP takes more structural reforms to boost business competitiveness in the supply chains and foster greater regulatory coherence in East Asia. And fourthly, a reinvented trade focused where the role of BIMSTEC becomes important. So BIMSTEC, it can facilitate stronger trade ties and support the interest of smaller members. And advent of increasingly complex geopolitics, it like for the time being, it might rule out the like broadening the South Asia and East Asia trade. It might be ruled out for some time because given the geopolitical situation in the Indo-Pacific region. So accordingly, a narrower geographical coverage between South Asia and Southeast Asia, it may be a building block for eventual trade integration across Asia. And slowing global trade means that trading more within Asia, it makes certain economic sense. And when we have the potential, so definitely it becomes an opportunity to take an advantage of, and having the political will to implement pro-trade policies can improve the lives of Asians. So this is one, we can say, one window which is open to specifically South Asian and Southeast Asian economies, given the global uncertain situation, specifically in the developed world, in the Western world, in Europe, and also America. Then one-horned rhinos, you can have a look in the picture also. So this is from the Popitora Wildlife Sanctuary, which is there in Assam. And Popitora, it has the world's highest concentration of Indian one-horned rhinos. So you can find out more about the Indian one-horned rhinos and their IUCN status. Then Pakistan, it launches a $2.7 billion of nuclear plant under CPEC, which is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And we know about the economic situation in Pakistan right now, and that is their small development. And again, talking about the budget 2023, so looking into its perspective in broader sense. So the major thing that we can make out, or we can take out from the budget 2023, is that there was increased and sharp increase in the capital expenditure by the government, which is seeking to crowd in the private investment. I hope you must have heard a lot of number of times about crowding out of the private investment, but with increased capital expenditure by the government, we would be looking into, or we would be seeing more crowding in of the private investment, specifically in infrastructure sectors like railways, roads, and power plants. And apart from that, on the other hand, we saw that subsidies on food, fertilizers, petroleum, and interest subsidies, they have been reduced. Allocation to MG Narega scheme, that has also been reduced significantly. So increase in capital expenditure and reduction in the revenue expenditure is what we saw in broader sense. And apart from that, defense expenditure, it saw a decline. And this is given in the backdrop that developed countries, they are increasing their defense expenditure, they're increasing their defense spendings, given the geopolitical situation and the Russia-Ukraine war, and again, because of the military rise of China in the Indo-Pacific. But India, we did not see a major thing or a major increase in the defense expenditure, and it was around 2% of the GDP on average under UPA2 government, and now it has fallen to 1.5% of the GDP in 2022-23. And apart from that, corporate tax collections as a share of GDP, it fell from 3.7% of the GDP under the UPA2. And now, right now, it is at 3.1% of the GDP in 2022-23. So the share of corporate taxes there, and GST revenues are obviously, when we have a look at the monthly figures, that is increasing. And in January, it was recorded at one of the second most highest revenue collections. Then again, talking about the collegium system. So government, it can seek a rethink on the collegium recommendations. So I've repeated this thing that if Supreme Court give certain recommendations about the names to the government, so government can ask the Supreme Court to reconsider those names. But if Supreme Court reiterates the same names to the government, so the government does not have any other option but to approve those names the second time when they are referred to it by the Supreme Court. And the union law minister, he has to say that there are 18 proposals on which reconsideration the Supreme Court collegium has been sought. So recently government has sought a reconsideration by the Supreme Court on those names. Then cites the database, reveals that Red Sanders smuggling, it basically is, the database is revealing that there is a clear discrepancy in the reporting of the trade in the endangered species by exporting and the importing countries. And you should be knowing that traffic, it is a global wildlife trade monitoring organization, and CITES, we know it is a convention on the international trade in endangered species of wild fauna and flora. So it is an international agreement between governments whose main aim is to ensure that international trade in the wild animals and plants, it does not threaten the survival of those species. So you should be clearly remembering this thing, that it is nowhere mentioning about prohibiting or barring the trade of these species. It is just that it want to ensure that the trade, it does not threaten their survival. So here we are talking about red sanders. So red sandalwood, it is an endemic tree species for distribution which is restricted to eastern Ghats of India, and they are found in Andhra Pradesh, and they grow up to a height of 10 to 15 meters. And this is reported to be one of the India's most exploited tree species, and China remains the largest importer of it. And the red sandalwood, it is listed under Schedule 4 of the Wildlife Protection Act. It is categorized as endangered under the IUCN Red List, and it is a very slow-growing tree which matures in around 25 to 40 years. So that is there. So as we were talking about the situation in Ladakh and the demand by the people, so he basically Sonam Wangchuk, so he is like saying that unemployment and indiscriminate police action against the civilians for uttering the phrase sixth schedule in public, that had contributed this feeling that the basically he said that center's policies sowing seeds of militancy in Ladakh. So because of the police brutalities against the civilians, he says that it feels like as if they are sowing the seeds of militancy in the Ladakhi people. And the fear is not that people will turn against India. The fear is that love for India will subside, and it is dangerous for a country that is facing the Chinese. So this is what he has to say, and he's a very famous personality. And talking about USA, so USA's military, it is going to get greater access to Philippines bases, and the 4 new locations, they bring the total number of sites accessible to US forces in the Southeast Asian countries to 9. So USA's presence is increasing in Indo-Pacific region given the plans to counter China's military rise. And apart from that, coming to the business page, firstly, we see that what IMF has to say. So IMF is saying that global central banks, they need to make clear to the financial markets the probable need for the interest rates to remain higher for a longer time period in order to bring the inflation sustainably back down to target and avoid a rebound in the price pressures. So he says that this thing needs to be made public, and people need to be made understand that It is important that interest rates they remain at a higher level for a certain longer time period so that inflation is brought down to a sustainable and a comfortable position, and loosening the monetary policies prematurely that could risk a sharp resurgence in inflation once activity rebounds. So if right now, because for the past 1.5 years the different central banks across different countries they have been adopting the tight monetary policies, and that is exactly the same situation in India. So IMF says that if we start loosening the monetary policy, so it is expected that inflation can sharply rebound. So that is obviously not going to be a good thing for the economies. And USA Federal Reserve, it has again raised its policy rate, and the Fed Chair Jerome Powell, he reiterated that the central bank does not plan to cut the rates this year as it needs to see goods disinflation followed by the marked progress in services sector. So even this year they are not expecting as of now that they are going to reduce the policy rates. And as we were talking about that RBI, it is seeking details about the bank's loans to Adani Group. So even SBI said that its Adani exposure, it is completely secured by cash generating assets. So that is there, and we'll be discussing this thing once like we have more details about the bank's exposures to the Adani Group. And obviously, if there is something wrong, then it is going to be a huge threat to the financial system of India, to our financial stability. Now we'll take up the Mint. So in Mint, we'll take up the rising prices of wheat. So wheat, it is costly, and when we have a look at this graph, the trend, it is showing that how the wheat prices have increased over a period of time. And this is because of a heat wave which led to the cut in the production of wheat. So over the past 1 year, we are seeing that they have climbed up to 22.2% inflation. So this is the retail inflation in wheat in percentage form. And wheat prices, they have stayed stubbornly high in India despite several steps which have been taken by the government, which includes export ban, and there was a recent announcement of open market sale by the government. And so we know that we just saw that how the wheat prices they have moved up gradually. So and how is the new wheat crops shaping up? So we see that planting data from the agriculture ministry, it shows that wheat is it is being sown over 34 million hectares, which is higher than the 5-year average area of 30 million hectares. And the size of the crop in the post-harvest wholesale prices, it will determine if the government can meet its procurement target for the supply of wheat to food subsidy schemes. So that is not yet certain right now. So what about the government stocks as of now? So when we look at the stocks of the Food Corporation of India, it held a stock of 17.1 million tons of wheat, and this is the lowest in the 6 years, but it is higher than the operational and the strategic buffer norm of 14 million tons. So it is higher than the 14, the norm for the buffer norms, but it is like at a 6 years low. And apart from that, end of January, so the government announced open market sale of 3 million tons to cool the market prices, which means center does not have any excess stocks currently. So it is exactly having 14 million tons of wheat, and that is what the buffer norms are to be. And apart from that, so what more steps can the government take to calm down the situation, to calm down the prices of wheat? So traders, they expect the government to announce a bonus to the farmers to ensure that procurement does not fall short. And we are seeing that without a bonus, the farmers, they may sell their crop in the open market, and the government may also set stock limits on private traders to ensure that they do not mop up the supplies, which might lead into further reduction in the supply of wheat. And lastly, will the export ban continue as of now? So most probably it is going to continue because still the prices have not come down significantly. And so this thing is going to continue, and we'll end it with the quote of the day, which comes from the Revenue Secretary. So he says that we would like to move towards a lower tax rate, which is simple and without tax exemptions. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining Ansar Kari, and we'll get the PDF link in the description box. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video as much as possible.